Okay, friends, it's the end of our last VOD until we take our little summer break. We return for Elul. Elul is always a lot to talk about, of course, for even non-serious people. Kosher came for the people, all the more so the people on this group. And I'm proud to be a member of your group. And what I want to do today is make a sharp pivot, just L'tzarech Hazman. We're in the 9 days, and Tisha B'Av is coming up. So I thought that as opposed to giving the regular VOD on Kinyanei HaTorah and tying what we did together over the summer, my head is much more in the 9 days in Tisha B'Av right now, as probably it should be. And I wanted to share some thoughts about how to make Tisha B'Av more impactful. I'll tell everybody that what I'm going to share now is mostly an introduction to a shir which I hope to share in the yeshiva, and I hope to send that on Wednesday, Erev Tisha B'Av, which is going to expand on some of the ideas we're sharing now and talk about six pivotal moments during six avodas to focus on during Tisha B'Av itself. We're not going to get into that, but anybody who hears this before that and wants to look out for that will be on my WhatsApp and wherever else I could send it. Could be the yeshiva will send it out. I don't know for those on Shapell, but anybody who wants that can WhatsApp me, and I'd be happy to send it. I hope it gets processed because but it looks good. Okay, so but I think it's Tisha B'Av is such a big day, the 9 days big day. It's a big Tisha B'Av. We hope we don't get to Tisha B'Av. We hope Mashiach comes, and we know that Klal Yisrael is in a certain way facing difficulties and sorrows we haven't had in a long time. Everybody knows the rise of anti-Semitism, how severe that is. It's an ugly marriage between the radical right and the radical left, the progressives and radical Islam. A lot of radicals. It's a strange marriage that we are experiencing. There's an Israeli comedian who says that in high school, all his friends wanted to go to Paris, so they all learned French. And he decided he's going to learn Arabic instead. Those are the options. And he said, but lo and behold, today the only one who can only one who go to Paris is him because he knows Arabic, and his friends only know French. And he can't speak French in Paris anymore. So that's a joke, but a lot of truth to that joke, as they say about a lot of jokes. And it's very bad. Baruch Hashem, we're not a little bit less fighting right now as opposed to the last 2.5, 3 years. But who knows when things are going to start with Iran again. And maybe most disturbing is all the fighting amongst brothers in Israel, the Haredi world and the Dati world. I don't want to get into the issues, but it's serious, and the lack of achdus, especially amongst the religious Jews, is very, 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 very saddening. And so it's a serious Tisha B'Av. That's what I'm trying to get to. I'm not going to go and answer and figure out how to solve all the world's problems right now. But I do think it's worthwhile for us to really dig into Tisha B'Av, which is day really which relates to the Gula and Mashiach, etc. So not necessarily in any specific order. I just want to give some key points that you might not have known about or focused on, which I think will, one who takes it seriously, we're not necessarily going to make a specific Kabbalah at the end, but I'm going to share a bunch of ideas which can help myself and all of you to make Tisha B'Av more impactful, and keep it in mind and take your own notes and try to focus on these things. And like I said, listen to the second half of all this on Wednesday, Bezrat Hashem. I remember over 35 years ago, I have about 5 points to share. I remember over about 35 years ago, my Rebbe Blachman shared a Rokeach. The Rokeach was, I think, one of the Bali Tosas, a big Makubal, a Kabbalist, and obviously a Gadol, a Rishon. And I never saw it inside. But we know that we don't say Tachnun on Tisha B'Av, which is very interesting. You'd think if there's any day you say Tachnun, it would be this one, right? This year, especially, it comes on Thursday. So we're not saying long Tachnun on Tisha B'Av. Why? So the Rekef says, the way Rabbi Blochman said it, I didn't see it inside, is basically the Kadosh Baruch is not hearing your tefillahs anyway. Sasam tefillasi, the pasuk says in Eicha, my the tefillah is closed. Why are you making extra tefillahs today? Kadosh Baruch is kaviyachal not listening. So a lot of the shir I'm going to give on Wednesday is really all based on a shalosh shudas that Rav Tzvi Meyer Zilber gave 2 weeks ago. So as they said in The Wizard of Oz, we're a long way from Kansas, right? See Meyer, he didn't bring this Rokaf, but based on his myriad sources and the tzaddikim and the Hasidic sources, etc., he sees Tisha B'Av as a day of tremendous kirva to the Rebbeinu Shalom, closest to Hashem, and almost seemingly the opposite. It's a day with this. The opposite has a tremendous ability to pull Yeshuas and to bring the Geula. It's mamish almost like the opposite. Um, how does that fit with the Rokach? I'm not even going to try. I just wanted to give that introduction that the way I'm seeing things for Tisha B'Av this year is much more in Tzvi Meyerland. It's hard to answer all the questions and be miyashiv everything, all the sources, and you go a certain way. So I just want to point that out. Um, One that's, I think, a super important idea, and I'm going to expand this idea also on Wednesday. I don't have some of the sources in front of me right now, but the way I remember it, there's a Gemara or a Medrash that says Rabbi Gamliel, the great Tana, was sitting and listening, and there was a woman who was an almana, or either lost her husband or lost a child, and she was crying terrible tears in the middle of the night. And Rabbi Gamliel heard her crying and began crying himself. I think it says until almost like Nashru Risei Eina of his eyelids or his eyelashes fell off. His eyelashes, not his eyelids and falls, but his eyelashes fell off. Terrible crying. And I think eventually the Talmidim made this woman move because it was bringing Rabbi Gamliel to this terribly low place. And the explanation that's given of this Chazal was that Rabbi Gamliel, in this woman's crying, didn't hear the individual crying of this woman, as terrible as her story was. When she was crying, he saw the Chorban. And that's really that was like a catalyst to all the feelings of Chorban bias, all the feelings of destruction of the temple, all that we lost. And not that it was like a reminder, not that, oh, she's crying and I'm crying and let's cry. But the idea, the way it's brought, the way Tzvi doesn't bring this particular chazal, but the idea he brings very strongly that all tsaras pratius, all gullus pratius, all of our personal chorbanos, all of our sufferings, all of our ruchnius sufferings and our gashmius sufferings are all rooted in Chorban bias. That means that sometimes it's difficult for us to relate to Chorban bias. Everybody says the basic question, something happened so long ago. We grew up in a vibrant Yiddishkeit, a robust Yiddishkeit. Today we talk about our Orthodox being robust and vibrant, but the midrashas, learning, etc. And it's not lacking to us so much the base of Mikdash, etc., which is a real issue, which I'm not dealing with that issue so much now directly, but I am dealing with it on the side, which is to realize that when you're crying over the Holocaust, when you're crying over the Inquisition, when you think about the tsaras, in your community, when you think about almanas, kids off the derech, I was speaking on Friday to a yucker, someone was talking about trouble he's having with his son. Mama spoke to him maybe 15, 20 minutes. I was holding licorice. I wanted to put it in my bag, and I was very aware of my licorice that I was holding. But you can't leave a yid talking in such a situation. Nebuch, and guy's telling me what he's going through with his son, giving a phone, not giving a phone, and this kid. It's unbelievable the tsaras that people have from children today, even the shalom bias, and there's a lot of tsaras out there. We have to know that's all those tsaras are rooted in korban bias. And this is what Tzvi says strongly, two things that I want to bring down. He says, and therefore, when you find it maybe hard to relate to the Beis HaMikdash's destruction, so relate to all those stuff. And that is also part of Avlei Tzion V'Yushalayim. And he goes and says it very clearly. I wish I could read it to you. He basically writes, you don't have to be medactic, well, is it exactly this I'm feeling or is it that I'm feeling? For sure, someone who feels sorrow over the bias, that's tremendous. But if you're feeling sorrow essentially Yisrael, either in the Holocaust or from things going on in your own community now or in your family, your relatives, that is it. That's great. Focus on that. The main thing is to get ourselves moving on Tisha B'Av, and that's the way to do it. Again, I feel sadly saying this because I've known this Rabbeim Leo for a long time. I didn't see the idea of Rabbi Meir, but he even goes out and says that idea. You don't have to start being medactic. Well, am I exactly feeling Avli Yerushalayim? Am I exactly now a Avel Tzion Yerushalayim? If you're feeling bad about the state of the Jewish people, if you're feeling bad because your team doesn't win tonight in the World Cup, don't bring that in. That's not our business. That's not us. Yeah. I'm trying very hard not to know what goes on during the 3 weeks, the 9 days. Trying very hard. The last year, I also tried hard. Hey, everybody's talking about stuff. You hear things, but Baruch Hashem, I'm trying hard not to know. But you have to. Even people put on their statuses today. So, but that's not. That's not. We're not. That's not Saras and Yisrael. But with Saras and Yisrael, difficult. The Jews suffer of all different types, and including that, a person's own Chorban Atzmo, how we're not who we should be in all different areas in our Torah, in our Avodah, in our Ben L'Chaver, in our Ben L'Mokim, in our Kedusha, our personal Chorbanos. That's all that. Because that's the idea of Ramul. It's all rooted in that. So I think it's very, very powerful means to make the day meaningful. Don't be stuck in the fact. You have time now? Read about the Beis HaMikdash, hear some shiurim, do whatever you can. Great. Comes Tisha B'Av, you didn't get there, you don't care that much about the Beis HaMikdash, change focus. Take it over to the Holocaust. Take it over to your friends' difficulties. Take it over to your own difficulties. Take it over to your own chesronis. But try to feel on Tisha B'Av. Okay, our second point. And this really relates to the third point is very in line with the second point, which is our generation is called Ikvisa de Mashiach, which means it's simply, I always like to know the Pashup shop, and that means it's called Akev is of course like the heel, but it means like the footfalls of Mashiach. I think that's the Pashup shot. We're like, Mashiach is just coming, footfalls. But many explain the idea that it's a reference to our state, earlier generations. If we see the Jewish people through all of history, Komas Knesset Yisrael, I think that's what Rafuna used to call it, Shlemus Komas Knesset Yisrael. The early Doris, Dora Midbar was like the head. And the door of the Rishonim was, I don't know where it was exactly, I can't even guess, but right there, the heart was the Beis HaMikdash or whatever it was. We're like the heel. We're the heel. Tzimai also brings, that I've seen in many sources, but Tzimai also brings the idea of like bus or mace. We're dead meat, We're dead. We don't have feeling so much. The gross is even sharper, like Rekev, we're like dust. Okay. Yidden used to cry puddles on Tisha B'Av. Pashut Yidden. Cry puddles and puddles and puddles. Today, I'm talking about even in very frum circles, it's hard to find people who really are misorer, right? What's the reaction to that? Don't worry. Try as much as you can. Hashem knows how hard it is for us to be a little emotional. And all he wants is a little miyat, the miyat that we can deliver, that we try the best. That's very, very beloved by him, right? This idea of minchas ani, the mincha, Chazal tell us the mincha, the ani, the wheat offering, the flour offering that the ani, that the poor man brings is very beloved to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Echad amar be'echad mamid. And there's a financial ani, and there's a ani and das, and ani alabadas, and there's an ani in emotion. We're ani and we're emotions. I remember there's a Yidden tells them Pinchas Sepash, the Koram Levracha, who used to cry during Slichos. It's incredible. I don't think I was ever with him on Tisha B'Av, but I remember during Slichos. Woo, woo. But that's how it used to be. There used to be full of people like that. Today, it's much less common. But the idea is to try. Don't let that frustrate you, and don't get down about it. But try the little we can. It's very, very different. Someone who's saying, "I'm not emotional," whatever. Let's be distracted over Tisha B'Av. As opposed to someone saying, "I'm not emotional, but I'm going to try my best." I've seen other sources that Stipel, I think, brings, even when someone's ma'or themselves as if they're crying, it also has a value of Shari Demos, Lonim, all of the gates of tears aren't closed, right? Someone who is emotional, Ashrecha. I always say that different people have different kochos, and sometimes in yeshivas are generally very intellectual places. So the people who are of strong seichel get a lot of credit in yeshiva. Okay, I understand that. But if you're an emotional person, you can more a little bit of real tears on Tisha B'Av, incredible. You don't know what you're doing for the Jewish people. And that's in a certain way, that's kind of like where someone could shine. Maybe you're not as a great in intellect, but if you bring emotion to the table, you bring something. Don't discount that. And Tzimar brings a nice mashal that you have a child. Mother was nifter from a family, lo aleinu, and there's a young son, 11, 10, 11. He's at that age where he could just kind of like make jokes. It doesn't really happen. Maybe 9, 10, 11, lo aleinu, lo aleinu. And there's something called that the son just acts totally inappropriately. He's just playing Game Boy with his friends and joking and things. It doesn't cop what goes on at all. And his father looks at it. His father's lost his wife. His father's trying to keep it together and think, how am I going to raise this kid? And he sees him joking and it hurts the father. There's something, the father says, I understand. Look, he doesn't really know what happened. He doesn't understand. It's a lot for him to take. He's little, he's young. But then if the kid tries to act appropriately, even though the father knows he doesn't really get it, but the kid has a sense. Some children have a sense of how to act. Kids, a kid he knows. The father's very proud of him, and the father takes nachas in the fact that the kid's acting appropriately. My son is acting appropriately. The father's a big nachas in that. He's suffering over his wife himself, but he has a nachas. My son inside, maybe my son's not acting as he should, but 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 he's trying. I see he's trying, and I see he's acting appropriately. He brings it's a nice mashal, but he also brings a little bit later from Pinchas Kartzer said to make a joke on Tisha B'av, not bonus, but he said to make a joke on Tisha B'av is sakanas nefashos. I'll go into that a little bit more on Wednesday, but I thought that was, it's dangerous to make a joke, Khalila. So I have to, everybody knows I like to make jokes. So I have to be careful myself not to make jokes. Not time to joke. But I don't feel inside. Okay, but at least you're trying, right? I think that's a very good mashal. When someone's trying to be someone who's truly appropriate, because every part of them is appropriate, someone else is trying to be appropriate. So people who try to be appropriate are appreciated. Okay, that's the third point. So first point is the general tfisa of Tisha B'av. It's a day of, just a quick chazara, not to lose in all the points. Tisha B'av is a day of tremendous spiritual impact. You can do great things. I'm going to jump ahead because I just want to give one example I saw, which was incredible. I forget who said it, but he brings from one of the early tzaddikim that said that dafka, when you're sitting on the floor, you can be pol yeshuas. You can do tremendous things for Klal Yisrael. Why? Because what are you doing then? The Shekhinah is in the Gullus. And I'm going to the Makom HaShekhinah, Shachal Afar Nafshena. I'm going down to where the Shekhinah is, Gaviyachal, and sitting together with the Shekhinah. You could imagine if you saw a king, and the king was down and out, and no one was accepting him. And you could walk by your way, pretending you don't see him. You sit down with the king. He's forlorn, he's down, he's beshiflus, and I'm also going to be beshiflus. Right? You can do tremendous things. You talk to the king then and say, like, I'm with you. So Gufa, since I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful idea. Since we're sitting with the king on the floor, Kaviyachal, so we can be Paul Yeshua's then. Listen, you get a message in when things change a little bit. He's going to remember the people who stuck with him when he was down, Kaviyachal. So, and he has a lot of examples like that. We'll talk more about that on Wednesday, but I'm just framing the day. I think that's a powerful way to day. This is a day of deep spiritual accomplishment as possible, right? How do we connect to the day? All the tsaris that we go through are because of korban bias, and we can connect the korban bias to our tsaris, and even if we feel less our tsaris, we can do that, right? Even if we don't have the most feeling, don't be down about it. Try your best. If you do have more feeling, realize you have a gift. If you don't have that gift, try your best, as opposed to just being miyayish, and whatever you can produce is appreciated. Now, how do we, though, point number 4 and then 5, we're almost done. How do we appreciate how much we're lacking about the Beis HaMikdash? So I think one is the point we already mentioned, that all the tsaros we wouldn't have had. It was a time really of a tremendous thing. One thing for those who are B'nai Aliyah, like the people on this chatter, the people on this Vaad are B'nai Aliyah, those that are trying to grow, is you have to realize our ruchnis would be on a whole different level. He brings An unbelievable Maisa. I've read this Maisa before, but um, but it hit me in a whole different way this time. I think this is how it goes. There was a chassan who came to the Yitav Lev. The Yitav Lev, I believe, was like the great grandfather, the grandfather of the Satmar Rebbe, a Rebbe in Hungary, the big Rebbe, and it was before his Ufruf and his Parshas Vayikra. And the chassan came, chassan came to the Rebbe, the Yitav Lev, and he said, I want to do tshuva before my wedding. I want to get a tikkun before my wedding, etc. So the Rebbe said, very, very good. Sit here, stay here. And he says, I'm going to be Mar Besedra. I'm going to review the Parsha. And the Rebbe himself reviewed the Parsha. Listen to this. And he got to the point of Vaker Vakroyim Yirchatz B'mayim. In Parsha Vayikra, it says, the innards of the korban, the innards of the sacrifice, you shall wash with water. Vaker Vakroyim, the inside kerev is the inside of the animal. Vakroyim are the legs. You should wash it with water. It's just like one of the things, something we would just read over. One of the things that you do with the korban, and the chassid started crying b'chias noros, terrible tears he had, and tshuva, he did the whole tshuva process himself. Akadei kach, the yelping was so great that the Rebbitzin of the Yitav Lev, of the Rebbe, called him out and said, you have to, to calm this down. Sent in the Gabayim to save the guy. So it seemed the common theme in some of the Hasidic literature, like when things went too high. So he says, so Ritzi Meyer points out so beautifully, he said, now obviously the Yitav Lev was involved, but you see that reading about the Korbanos, that's all it was. Reading about the Korban from a Petzadik, from the mouth of a tzaddik, reading about the korbanos can cause such a hisaurus. That's what it was. Right? In other words, we're reading about the korban. We're reading about the fact that korban gets cleansed, right? And the chassid said afterwards, I felt like he was cleaning my insides. So imagine if you could see a korban, how much it would clean you. Now, we think that's one of the bad things about this generation, because I think so much stuff comes on, everything gets now with AI, they're making all these things. We think, oh, I get it. Yeah, I get it, because I saw an AI. I saw an AI representation of what it looks like in corporate. You don't get it at all. If you're doing through Mamchish a little bit, okay, but if that makes you think you get it, like I don't need the base of Mikdash now. I saw AI, dude. No. I don't usually say dude on this VOD, but on this one gets a dude. No. It's like, it's the real deal. When you're in the base of Mikdash, see a korban, and it's your korban, and it's you grew in the most incredible way. I thought it's a beautiful, beautiful example. So when we think about ourselves, that we struggle so much, look at our VOD, struggle to grow a little bit, Baruch Hashem, Yirei Hashem, speaking to each other, such a tremendous mile in our generation. We're trying to grow, but okay, a little, you try this, you try that. Here, imagine if you could go someplace and suddenly your life would be changed. You go someplace and you get total consciousness. You go someplace and everything became clear. I remember my Rosh Yeshiva said that once he had questions in Emunah or something like purpose, serious questions. It's called existential type questions. And he was a young bacher, and he went to speak to the Chazon Ish, imagine, and he was thinking, what's he going to say to the Chazon Ish? What's he going to say? And by the time he got to the Chazon Ish, he didn't say anything. Just having to go speak to the Chazon Ish is so uplifting. I sent the Talmud recently to Ritzi Meyer, and he said, he had a big question. He said he felt, you could feel there's reality. And we try so hard. Rav Wolbe said, what's the main thing? The main thing is to try to realize that Ruchnius is reality. And we try so hard to see that. Our tefillah is so shallow so often. And our religious experience is so shallow. Our Shabbos are so shallow. What's Shabbos? Shalom, what is it? Yom Tov may be a little easier, but we're so not, what do we feel in Shabbos? We're uplifted on Shabbos. We're going through things. But you would go to the base of Mikdash, everything was clear. It was like seeing 50 Gedolim. It was like seeing the truth. It was seeing Shemayim V'Aretz kissing. It was seeing reality. And it moved you. All that we don't have. Okay, so I thought that was a very powerful imagery that, just saying the words. He had another mice about the it didn't see this one. This one it seemed more like clear, so I brought it. He had another one about someone heard the Chidush Room say "Vabita mincha." It's like, okay, but let's just hold that. I care about crime. I made a chassid crime. Okay, so the final point I want to bring is that I think it's very chashuv to realize that by engaging in Tisha B'Av, and of course these are just random things. There are many, many, many more ideas to talk about Tisha B'Av in the 9 days, but I'm giving a shmooze on Tuesday also. People are welcome to get that. I think that we talk about all different kavana in the days what we're talking about today, but I think it's important to realize we grow by the veilus. A person grows. At the end of the day, Tisha B'Av is a day which we could just approach as like, okay, I want to get through. We're thinking about vacation. I'm also thinking about my vacation. Actually, I just secured. I want to take care before the 9 days. Unfortunately, I didn't get it done. My wife's in America. Okay, and I felt bad, but I did secure my trip next week. So we're thinking about vacation, and milking's not so bad today anyway. No, no, no. You got to dig into Tisha B'Av. I'm talking to myself. Dig into it, dig in, and make something out of it. And if you make something out of it, you grow. First off, in a Pashut way. But I want to expand this and add a new insight, which I want to share. Everybody knows Chazal say, "Kol misabel Yerushalayim zocha v'roa b'nechamasa." If you're misabel, you will see the gula. And many are medayik zocha v'roa, not yireh v'roa. You see now. Now there's a sug in that. There was a massive Rebbe, the third generation of Hasidus, he was the Magnum Ezra's son. He died young. Actually died in 1776. Yeah. And he died before 40. He's named Avram. They called him Avram Hamalach. So that's pretty chashuv to be called Hamalach. Not too many people get that title. And he obviously had a very, very great father. The Maggid Mezrich was the Iker Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, the Iker Mafetz of his Torah. He was the Rebbe of the Kedushas Levi and the Balatanya. And who else? The Noam Elimelech, I think, and others. Zusha. The Mag was the Maggid. I mean, he was the Maggid. Yeah, this is his son. So it was said that all of his madrigas, how did he reach his high level? Doesn't say this about many people. It says through crying and davening on these days. The efforts that he put into that, incredible. And interestingly, here's what I wanted to finish with. I think a person can be zocheh to simcha through this. I'll bring a proof that you can actually be zocheh to joy. And a person who is misabel correctly can be zocheh to simcha, joy, which we all want happiness. What's my proof? This is incredible. The Ribnitzer Rebbe, the Ribnitzer was mamish an otherworldly Rebbe, and he was put into our generation to see. This is literally, by the way, you should know, I don't say everything. I'm selective what I say from Tzimar because he brings from so many different sources and he brings so much, and I get lost in all of his sources myself. So I try to bring the parts which I seem to me more something. I mean, he's very careful, but still, it seems like he brings a lot of stuff. Here he had letters from his friends who were by the Ribnitzer. He has mamish letters accounting to everything I'm about to tell you. Letters of people who were there, who saw it, who were around it. He said every single night, the Heilige Ribnitzer would say Tikkun Chatzotz for 5 hours. 5 hours of crying over the Chorban. It was L'malam and a Tevel and Mamish. A lot of time his head was between his legs, which usually can't hold in such a position. He cried out loud. He had buckets of tears, they said, which didn't make any sense because everybody knows, who read about the Ribnitzer. There's an art scroll book about it. You can read about it. It's beyond belief, the Ribnitzer. He hardly ate, he hardly drank, so they didn't know how could he even produce that many tears, right? There was no way. It was l'malam and a teva mamish. And here's the interesting thing: when he finished, though, like he had those 5 hours, so you think like he's a person who's fasting the whole time anyway. 5 hours a day of what he comes out, he's depressed. He finished the Tikkun Chatzos, and then he was happy. They said he came out, his mom was like Simchat Suma. Yeah, a Simchat Suma. It was a general, and in general, they said there was Miyuchad and a Simcha. So it was like kind of like Rav Nachman writes somewhere. Rav Nachman, Nachman writes, a person is supposed to be, Nachman writes a lot about Simcha, but Nachman himself writes somewhere that 1 hour a day you're Bitsar and Avelis, but the Rim is 5 hours digging in. I mean, think about what you do for 5 hours. When was the last thing you learned for 5 hours in a row? Imagine, I don't know how a person cries that much. They couldn't, just, no one could, people who saw it couldn't believe it. 5 hours in a row, he's sitting night after night. On Tisha B'Av, by the way, he didn't like this, that people snuck in and looked at it. But Tzimaier is a whole thing. Tzimaier is upset that he never went to see it, but then he knew the Rebbe didn't want to see it. So he has a whole dian in himself. Was I wrong for not going? As a young kid, he was in Monsey. The Rebbe was in Monsey once. But Tzimaier said that the Rebbe didn't want people to see it. But he was torn. It seems like his maskana was he was right for not going because the Rebbe didn't want. But he said on Tisha B'Av in Borough Park, he would go 12 hours like that. The Rebbe was crying 12 hours straight. And Shemar says the Kaddish Baruch Hu was Megala one tzaddik, so we should still know what it is. What it is that we lost the Beis Hamikdash. But anyway, that's just an incredible thing which I wanted to share. Especially again, I don't say every over Chassidish Maisa. I say the ones which seem to be more, something accurate or more based in a Litvish way, etc. I'm not questioning them, but it's hard for me to believe all of them. But here he says, Mami, he has his friends, he has letters that his friends wrote, he's quoting exactly, and they saw it. And Rabbi Schoonmaker says, these are my friends, and they're Nemanim, and they're very accurate people, and they say it 5 hours. And then in Borough Park, everybody knew he would go 12 hours in a row, the same person, 12 hours, puddles. He used to have ashes, and it would be like puddles afterwards from the crying and the ashes, everything. So it's a mitzvah just to share that. It was worth. If you got nothing else out of this year, just hear the description of what a person was like that. But what I want to bring out, friends, for us is afterwards he was happy. Now, obviously, you can't bring proofs from miracles. The Rimser was one big miracle. He was open to all types of miracles. Everybody knows that. But what I want to say is maybe we can understand that on an open pashut also. On a lower level, we can understand his happiness. That's what I wanted to share. How? Because it's like leaving your comfort zone. I think we all like to be in our comfort zone, including me. And we all feel great about ourselves when we leave our comfort zone. When a person feels like I stood up to something, it wasn't easy, had a confrontation, or I faced this insecurity I have, and I spoke anyway, or I spoke to that person anyway, or I did this mitzvah anyway that I'm not so good at. And for me, like I'm very, very conscious of my bad voice. And in yeshiva, I don't mind. But for me to get up and daven, I'm super conscious. Like if I would get up and daven musaf, whoa, I'm so self-conscious. I never do that, right? That'd be like, whoa, so out of my comfort zone. I feel good afterwards. Feel simcha. So in a very low level, I want to explain, maybe that's part of the simcha. We don't like being misable because we don't like to leave our comfort zone. Our comfort zone is, our Yiddishkeit is to go, cry, be misable. Maybe people are going to see me sitting on the floor, getting dirty. We're not comfortable with the whole ASIC. And it's a lack of, listen carefully, it's a lack of leaving our comfort zone, but it's also a lack of shleimus, of getting the whole experience of Yiddishkeit. We all know that we're missing something in Yiddishkeit. We learn, we daven. Yeah, but there's a whole sugya which is brought in Siman Hay and Shulchan Aruch. And there's something called Tikkun Chatzos, and there's something called Misal B'Yushalayim, there's something called Lead. There's a whole part of our Yiddishkeit which we're not dealing with. We're just as outside of us. So it's our comfort zone, and staying in our comfort zone makes us not be shalim and not grab the full experience of Judaism, which we all love and appreciate. So when a person does that and says, you know what, I'm totally speaking to myself here more than usual, right? I'm just good at describing it. And say, like, you know what? No, I'm really going to dig in, and I'm going to cry, and I'm going to be emotional, and I'm going to try my hardest, and I'm not going to just pass and wait for the day to end and read, a book or something. I'm really going to dig in this issue. You can be happy in the end because I hopped it. Okay, so I know on a spiritual level, it's probably has to be something to do with the Zocha V'roa. That's what Tzimaier says. He was Zocha V'roa. He saw the Gul already. Then it's a pshat which we can't relate to. But I think maybe in an open pashut, the Rebnitzer was happy because he knew that he's doing what's supposed to be done. Part of Yiddishkeit is to be happy, and part of Yiddishkeit is to dig into the Chorban. And when you do what's right, and when you try and you leave your comfort zone and you're b'shleimus, you're chopping everything, there's no greater joy. Maybe that's part of the joy of the Rebnitzer. So those are 5 points. Quick 1 second review. We can get great things done on Tisha B'Av, right? We have to remember that all the tzaras that happen are related to that big tzara. even though we don't have so much emotion today, we try our best, and it's powerful, especially when we sit on the floor. We're close to the Shekhinah. We can do things because we're together with the Shekhinah is also on the floor, Kaviyachol, right? We have to remember how much lacking we are in the base of Mikdash. That I point about all the tzaras related to that. Our ruchnius would be on a whole different level. Like Kebra crying Yerchatz B'mayim, right? We could just seeing korbanos, seeing the base of Mikdash, seeing the Kohanim would change us. And finally, we have to know that we grow by this Avelis. By engaging fully, we grow. Zochavro and Chamasa, we're touching the Geula when we do this. The Shorker is the one who said it. That Avram Malach reaches great levels by being involved in this Avelis. And a person could even touch Simcha. We could be joyful after. We could have a whole different Shabbos Nachamu if we dig in correctly. So Kadosh Baruch Hu Zakas that we shouldn't experience Tisha B'Av. Holy Mashiach will be here before that, and everybody can scratch the shmuz, and we go straight to Simcha. But if not, I believe hopefully by thinking about some of these ideas, Tisha B'Av would that be that more impactful for us. Okay, and anybody wants to hear more of this, Bezrat Hashem, Tuesday I'm saying a shmuz in Yeshiva, Wednesday I'm giving the continuation of this year, and we'll talk about 6 points, 6 times specifically on the day of Tisha B'Av to focus based on what Tzimar said. Okay, thanks so very much, everybody. I know it wasn't the typical vibe, not what you were expecting, but I think it was the right thing to speak about. And have a good time and have a meaningful summer, and look forward to seeing everybody in hell. Shalom, shalom.